A billionaire disguised as a homeless man walked into a luxury restaurant and ordered the most expensive steak on the menu, just to see the true faces of those in power. He was humiliated, threatened, and quietly set up for something far worse. When the steak was placed before him, a black waitress silently slipped a small piece of paper into his hand. He read it and froze completely. Not from fear, but because for the first time that night, someone dared to tell him the truth. That note stopped him from eating and prepared him to destroy everything. But what did it say? The clothes Frank Grant wore that evening were older than most of his employees. 35 years old to be exact. A faded jacket with holes at the elbows and pants stained with memories he had never been able to wash away. He kept them in the back of his penthouse closet, hidden behind rows of tailored suits worth more than some people's annual salaries. Tonight, for the first time in decades, he put them on again. His assistant Diana stood by the door, watching him with barely concealed concern. She had worked for him for 12 years and had seen him make decisions that shook entire industries. But this was different. "You could send someone else," she said. "A professional inspector. Someone trained for this." Frank looked at her through the mirror as he smeared dirt across his face. "No one can see what I need to see." The anonymous letter had arrived a week ago. No return address, just a short video clip and 3 sentences typed on plain paper. The video showed a man in ragged clothes being dragged out of a restaurant by security guards while well-dressed customers laughed. The letter read, "Le Méridien, your restaurant, your responsibility, or isn't it?" Le Méridien was the worst-performing location in his entire chain. The quarterly reports blamed it on the neighborhood, the economy, the changing demographics. But Frank had built his empire on one simple principle. Every person who walks through the door deserves to be treated with dignity. If that principle was being violated under his name, he needed to know. He removed his Patek Philippe watch, slipped off his wedding ring, and placed them on the dresser. The only thing he kept was a small phone hidden in a compartment he had carved into the sole of his shoe, capable of recording audio and making emergency calls. As he headed for the door, Diana made one last attempt. "Frank, please, at least take security." He stopped and turned to face her. The scar on his right hand, the one he had carried since he was 23 years old, since a chef had poured boiling water on him for daring to search through a restaurant's garbage, seemed to burn under his skin. 35 years ago, no one protected me, he said quietly. And no one is protecting the people walking into that restaurant right now. That's why I have to go alone. Diana nodded reluctantly. "I'll be parked across the street with the legal team. One signal from that phone and we're inside in 30 seconds. Frank allowed himself a small smile. "That's why I keep you around." At 7 o'clock on a Saturday evening, Le Méridien was alive with the sound of clinking glasses and murmured conversations. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over white tablecloths, and the scent of seared beef and expensive wine hung in the air. The clientele was exactly what you would expect. Men in designer suits, women dripping with jewelry, all of them paying $200 a plate for the privilege of being seen in the right place. Sonia Williams had worked there for 3 years, long enough to know that the gleaming surface hid something rotten underneath. She moved between tables with practiced efficiency, refilling water glasses and clearing plates, invisible in the way that service workers were supposed to be. Her feet ached from standing since noon, but she couldn't afford to slow down. Her 7-year-old daughter Lily had another doctor's appointment next week, and the copay for her asthma medication had gone up again. Her younger brother's college tuition was due at the end of the month. She had learned long ago to read people by their eyes. It was a survival skill from a childhood spent navigating spaces where she didn't belong. She could tell within seconds whether a customer would tip generously or stiff her, whether they saw her as a person or just part of the furniture. When the front door opened and a homeless man walked in, she saw immediately that something was wrong. Not with him, with everyone else. He was disheveled, yes. His clothes were torn and dirty, his beard unkempt, and he carried the unmistakable odor of someone who hadn't showered in days. But his posture was wrong. His shoulders were too straight, his stride too confident. And his eyes, dark, watchful, taking in every detail of the room. Those were not the eyes of a man who had been defeated by life. The hostess tried to block him at the entrance, her smile frozen in professional horror. The security guard moved closer, hand already reaching for his radio. And then, Ricky Thornton appeared. Ricky had been the manager of Le Méridien for 5 years. He was the kind of man who wore his authority like a weapon, wielding it against anyone he deemed beneath him, which was almost everyone. He smiled at corporate executives and investors, but Sonia had seen the way he spoke to busboys and dishwashers when he thought no one was watching. "Sir," Ricky said, his voice dripping with false politeness, "I'm afraid you've made a mistake. This establishment may not be suitable for your situation." The homeless man didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a thick wad of cash, more money than Sonia made in a month. "Table 7, he said calmly. "The Wagyu A5, medium rare. I'll pay in advance." A ripple of shock went through the room. Ricky's smile flickered, caught between greed and disgust. He couldn't refuse paying customers, that was rule number 1 in the hospitality industry. But every instinct was screaming at him to throw this man out. "Of course," Ricky said through gritted teeth. "Right this way." He led the man to the worst table in the restaurant, tucked in a corner near the kitchen doors and the restroom hallway, where the noise was loudest and the smell occasionally drifted in from the garbage bins outside. It was the table they used for customers they wanted to humiliate into leaving. The homeless man sat down without complaint. Ricky turned to scan the floor, his eyes landing on Sonia. "You," he said. "You're always talking about helping people in need. Here's your chance." It was meant as punishment, and they both knew it. Sonia walked to the table, water pitcher in hand, and poured a glass without meeting the man's eyes. But when she set it down, she felt him watching her. She looked up. His eyes caught hers, and in that moment, something passed between them. Recognition, maybe, or understanding. She couldn't name it, but it made her skin prickle with unease. This man was not who he appeared to be. In the kitchen, Ricky pulled the sous chef aside. Carlos Taylor was 28 years old and had been working at Le Méridien